Why do we think that Anne Boleyn is so special? Why are we drawn to her story? In this Once Upon a Woman video, part of my series on the 6 wives of Henry VIII, we started, with Catherine of Aragon last week. I'm discussing today the 6 reasons why I personally think that Anne Boleyn is absolutely fascinating. You have now to know that my next book is on Anne Boleyn, and I cannot wait to share it with you, share more information once I'm allowed to do so. So please watch this space because there will be lots of information. I will also put books down below on Anne Boleyn for you to look at, and it's very important that if you have an interest in one of these women, that you don't rely on videos, that you actually look at the books of people, especially the latest one, The Final Year of Anne Boleyn by Natalie Grueninger, who is the host and creator of Talking Tudors. I highly recommend this book. It's down below. Please check it out. But for me here is really to delve into the 6 reasons, in my opinion, why Anne Boleyn is so unique. You like her or not, at the end of the day, we're all a little bit fascinated with her, aren't we? Anne Boleyn was born around 1500, 1501. There was a discussion among historians that she might have been born around 1507, but that makes no sense because we know that she was at the Margaret of Austria's court in Mechelin about 1513, 1514, and then we know that she was actually in France from 1515 to 1521. So they would not have sent a 7, 8, 9 years old there, and it makes more sense that she was actually a young teenager when she was there, when she had her proper education. She's the daughter of the courtier and ambassador Sir Thomas Boleyn. She has Irish ancestry. She is, from a family full of ambitions. She's also the daughter of Elizabeth Howard, obviously Elizabeth Boleyn, the sister of the very powerful Duke of Norfolk. So we have here a very strong kind of background. People with very strong noble blood, but at the same time, at the end of the day, she was only the daughter of a courtier and an ambassador. She's not the daughter of a very powerful king or powerful queen like, Catherine of Aragon was. And so here that's why, I think there are so much interest in her story. She's a bit of the underdog, if you see what I mean. And so let's dive into the 6 reasons why I think she's so fascinating. Well, for me, the first reason why I'm so drawn to her is definitely because of the French influence. Is that kind of formative years, 1515 to 1521, when she spent time in France. So when I was writing my book, I was really looking at the sources there. It's not very surprising that there is little information really on Anne. At the time, she's kind of a nobody. Right? She hasn't done anything yet with her life, and so there are no really records that are going to tell us exactly what she's done over there. However, what's absolutely important is the fact of how she was a witness of the French court. She was at the court of Francis I, and Francis I is from the branch of the Valois-Angoulême, which comes from the Valois-Orléans. So he was not born to be king in many ways. And his mother, Louise of Savoy, spent all her life placing us in the right and giving us his best shot and best education to ensure that one day he will be king. But it's mostly luck. It's mostly because the king and his wife didn't have any hair. Male and women were not allowed to be on the throne. Boo, France, boo, I know. So they really didn't believe in female power in France. It's quite shameful, really. It's quite shameful. But here we have Louise of Savoy, a very powerful woman. I'm going to make a video on her. I'm going to make a video also on Francis I's sister, Margaret of Angoulême, because here you have Anne Boleyn meeting these 2 women when she's only 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And there's a massive impact on her because Francis I is glorifying these women. He's very devoted to his mother, but he's also very close to his sister. She's his older sister, so he's the baby brother, if you see what I mean, in terms of dynamic in their relationship. And though he's king, you know, he's still the baby brother, and he's still a mummy's boy. So, which is so funny, because when you think of Francis I going to battle, being a Renaissance warrior king, it's quite funny when if you shift, you know, your mindset in like, well, actually, let's see how you behave, you know, with the women in your life. But Anne Boleyn was at the service of his wife, Francis I's wife, Claude of France. And what's so fascinating here is the fact that Anne Boleyn was not supposed to be at the service of Claude of France. When she was sent in 1515 to France, it was to be at the service of Mary Tudor, Henry VIII's sister, who had married Louis XII. But Louis XII is going to die within a few months before after the marriage, after the coronation and everything. And so here you have Anne Boleyn arriving at court, supposedly to be the lady-in-waiting of Mary Tudor, but Mary Tudor is going back to England. You know, it's also her own story. I'll make another video on her as well. A very, you know, kind of scandalous story, but very fascinating. And Anne Boleyn is stuck there, and we don't know exactly how, but her father must have managed to convince Francis I to put his daughter at the service of his wife, Claude of France, probably arguing that they were more or less the same age and that they would get on. And she's in the shadow of that queen, and we believe that queen to just, you know, she does get pregnant very often, and so to be completely discreet, completely like, you know, removed from court is not exactly the case. And that's where it gets so interesting, because if you follow Claude, then you follow Anne Boleyn in France. And I won't say too much because it's in my book, my next book, but it's absolutely fascinating, because here we have the formative years where Anne Boleyn becomes herself. The second reason why we're so fascinated with Anne Boleyn, I believe, is because of her return to England, obviously. We have to remember that when she comes back to England, and that's actually a very important point for me. I think it's where I almost feel the most for her. And let me explain. I do feel a lot for Anne Boleyn, if I'm honest with you. But here, she comes back to England with a very strong education. She's been a lady-in-waiting at one of the most powerful courts of Europe. She comes back, she's, you know, she's a bit exotic, she's a bit different. And probably because in her education, she's mostly French. So she's kind of different in that way, in that sense. And I think she embraced it. She comes back, she has no intention at the time to pursue or to seduce Henry VIII. She's not at all in that mindset. And actually, she has other suitors that Henry VIII is going to kind of like make sure, you know, everything's going to fall through and that it's not going to work out. He is obsessed with her. We don't really know how it happened, but he met her and he became obsessed with her. And that's where, for me, like, where the thing starts, you know, being very emotional when you think about Anne Boleyn, because she wanted nothing to do with him at first. Do you see what I mean? Like, she had no interest. She was sent to the English court. She's like at the service of Catherine of Aragon. She's a lady in waiting. She's very used to that role. And yet you have this man who has decided that he will make her his mistress. And he's ruining her love life with any other men, potential other men. And it's obviously not just him, because there's his father who is like very then intrigued that the king himself is interested in his daughter. There's also the rumor, obviously, that Henry VIII had a relationship with her sister, Anne Boleyn's sister, before, Mary Boleyn. Actually, in evidence in the primary sources, we have nothing of that. That really proves that. And so here I think we need to be a bit cautious about exactly what happened. I think it's a way to describe these two women as too promiscuous, that the Boleyn women were like, family, records and stuff like this. So here I think we need to be a bit careful. But here she comes back and she has the attention of this man who wants to make her his mistress. And that leads to my third point. My third point is Anne Boleyn then becomes very ambitious. And probably because she's so, that's my theory. And please comment down below to tell me what you think. But here I think that Anne Boleyn, who spent so many years at the French court, in the shadow of Claude of France, Francis I's wife, she saw Francis being highly unfaithful. He had so many mistresses, and she met these mistresses. One of them was the chief royal mistress, so very, prestigious. But she also realized that no one can replace Claude. Claude is the one who's going to get pregnant, is going to, secure the line. But at the end of the day, even if you're a chief royal mistress, yes, you might have lands, you might have wealth, but you won't have prestige. You won't have this, you're not a queen. And for Anne Boleyn, I think that here, when she realized, all right, Henry VIII really wants me, he really pursues me, I don't want to be a mistress. And here there's this ambition of becoming a queen. And again, it becomes very emotional for me to talk to you about this, because we know that this ambition of becoming a queen is also what is going to lead her to a really tragic end. The fourth reason why I think Anne Boleyn is so special is the fact that she's so human. Hear me out. Yes, we have reports of her having a very bad temper. We have reports of Elizabeth I having a very bad temper, throwing sleepers at the faces of her, ministers and stuff. I think they deserved it. Maybe she slapped one ambassador or two, and I think they probably deserved it. Yes, I do. You can blame it for it, but and we have Anne Boleyn who also had a bad temper, but also I think because her emotions are so modern, she reacts with, she follows her heart. So you have a very ambitious woman, but she's very intelligent. Is she truly politically astute? She can be, but I don't think she is as politically astute as, for example, Catherine Parr or Elizabeth I later on, her daughter. I think that she doesn't really understand completely how the games play. And that's why I think there's this fascination with her, because we can relate to her. I mean, she follows her heart. She doesn't follow her head most of the time. And she's very human. She displays her emotions quite openly. And for that, I think it makes her so relatable that we are drawn to her story, and we are drawn to her character and to her. We know she's not perfect, and it doesn't matter, because we want to know her, we want to get to know her, and that's why we have so many books on Anne Boleyn. So I think that's why it's such a fascinating story, such a fascinating character. It's her humanity that comes through all these sources that are not written by her. Another reason, my fifth reason of why Anne Boleyn is so special, was she gave birth to Elizabeth I of England, which is arguably one of the greatest English monarchs. Whatever you want it, again, Elizabeth is not perfect, and I'll make videos on that imperfection, because I am not scared of telling you the mistakes she made, the problems she caused, but at the same time, I don't want us to forget that Elizabeth I is a woman who ruled on her own for 44 years in a male-dominated world. She's not a feminist, but she's a feminist icon. She's that kind of yes, you can do it. You can, be yourself, believe in yourself, and choose the path you want to choose for yourself. Elizabeth chose to remain single, to be on her own, and to rule on her own. And Anne Boleyn is the mother of that woman. That motherhood, that mother-daughter relationship is absolutely incredible, and it participates in the idea that Anne Boleyn is so special. At the end of the day, she's the woman who brought into this world this fierce and brave and intelligent woman to the English throne. Now, the last reason I think we're so drawn to Anne Boleyn's story is definitely because of the impossible. The impossible is Anne Boleyn's execution. I believe that because she was beheaded at the Tower of London on the 19th May 1536, it was it was unprecedented. It had never been done before. It is a shock. It is a shock when you learn about history, because you're like, oh my God, a queen was like beheaded before Marie Antoinette, and in another country, and for ridiculous reasons. Anne Boleyn became, a problem to deal with. Anne Boleyn became a problem for Henry VIII that he had to remove. And he did it in the most cruel way. He executed her. And worse than that, she's a woman that we try to erase from history. Her letters or papers were burnt or destroyed. There's almost like no trace of Anne Boleyn's voice. And that is why we are so obsessed with her, because we're trying with all the puzzles, with all the other sources as historians, and you as the audience, as the readers, we're trying to figure out, who was she? And because there will always be a little doubt of who she was exactly. Was she that, with this bad temper? Really, did she really want the death of, there's this myth, she really wanted the death of Catherine of Aragon and Princess Mary. Was it true? Was it true? We will never truly know until we find a source from her saying, that she wanted to do this or that. And so each time we have to remember that when we look at sources of Anne Boleyn, they are written by men. And so here we have to be careful at what we look at, but I think it's what is making our interest in her even more vivid. Anne Boleyn has a very tragic end that no one saw coming, maybe probably not even her. And so here it's quite like you're drawn to her because in many ways, especially right now as a historian, you almost want to save her, and it's obviously not possible. And you do feel for that woman who's going to leave behind a 2.5-year-old daughter. That's a story. So I think with all these reasons, that is why we can say that Anne Boleyn is so special. She's so special because of her education, of her circumstances, of her humanity, personality, but also because of her tragic end and the fact that her words were erased from history. I really hope that you enjoyed that video on Anne Boleyn and that you will be with me for the one next week on Jane Seymour. You can watch a playlist, maybe on Once Upon a Woman, have more videos on different women. I love women history, and I hope you will enjoy learning more about these fantastic women. And it's not just for women, my audience, it's also for you men, because I'm sure that you also want to learn a different type of history. So please check it out. And thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot for me. And thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Bye.